Oh no!
Excuse me, sir?
Well, it's finally here, ladies and gentlemen. The New World game preview dropped August 25th, and like many on the MMORPG scene, I flocked to Steam immediately and began the hefty 40 gig download. New World, if you aren't aware, is Amazon Game Studios' major MMORPG game that was unveiled, or at least known about, I believe, as far back as 2016. The game has a unique setting in which players take control of colonizers during the mid-1600s. Things take a turn towards strange though, as this new world seems to be inhabited by some ancient corrupted force that is causing decay and death in the land you are trying to settle in. Initially, the game seemed like it was going to be the next revolution in the MMORPG genre, immediately becoming a beacon of hope for some people, oddly enough. However, if you've been following the game's developments in various MMO news outlets, especially from YouTubers, the game has had a bit of an identity crisis. Initially, the game was sold to be an open-world, fully survival-esque sandbox PvP experience, which then shifted to a more traditional PvE with PvP elements MMO. When the shift in focus happened, many who were looking forward to the game turned away understandably, and with behind-the-scene alpha testers giving concerning feedback, Amazon delayed the game from its initial May release date to September, and then delayed it again into spring 2021. My experience with New World was more or less neutral. I didn't spoil myself with any early gameplay footage or naysayers on the internet because I wanted to experience the game for myself before I formed an opinion. Obviously now, I have become more familiar with the game as well as the opinions of those who have been waiting on New World. So after playing the game during this early game access, is it everything that people have been hoping it would be? Well, let's talk about my first impressions with New World.
And now, you have come to this place, lured by the promise of power and immortality. The darkness will claim you.
Well everyone, I have to be honest here. This may become my new full-time MMORPG. After playing current games like Elder Scrolls Online, ArcAge, RuneScape, World of Warcraft, and what have you, New World has a lot of cool things going for it that I've wanted in an online role-playing game. Let's start with the basics here. New World is an open-world sandbox MMORPG. It will follow a monetization model similar to Guild Wars 2, in which it will be pay-to-play with an upfront cost of $40, with other purchases that will come in the future, such as expansions or a cosmetic cash shop. New World opens up with a cinematic that sets up the storyline of the settler that you are playing as within the storyline. The cutscene leads straight into character creation, which, if I'm being honest here, is actually really disappointing considering the game is coming in 2021. Compared to a lot of other games on the market right now, the lack of options like sliders or even character voice seems so minimal for such a big budget AAA title. Either way, it's not anything that will impact your experience anyways, since your armor will cover up your character's appearance. After you create your character and choose your name, you are then thrusted into the tutorial, which will teach you how to play the game, introducing combat mechanics and various other features. The main story quest that you play during your early experience will act as a continuation of the tutorial, since many of the beginning quests will introduce other mechanics to you slowly, such as crafting or factions, which is good for players who want an explanation of how the nuances of the game work. Combat in New World will feel right at home for veterans of the Dark Souls series. Combat is action-oriented, meaning every strike, arrow fired, or bullet shot needs to be aimed properly if you want to hit your target. While not as refined as the Dark Souls games, New World's mechanics with combat will have you blocking attacks, managing stamina, interrupting, block breaking, dodging, using normal and heavy attacks, swapping weapons, animation canceling, etc. Most enemies in the beginning will pose little challenge, but as you start to gain levels and fight tougher enemies, they will begin to counterattack and fight better against players who ignore all the tools in their arsenal, which may be a bit of a shock for players who plan on just spamming the attack button to get past the early parts of the game. The weapon you choose to fight with in combat more or less determines your class, or at least your playstyle. Currently, at the time of the game preview, there is the straight sword and shield, hand axe, two-handed hammer, fire staff, quarterstaff, life staff, bow, and musket. Further evidence shows that there are more weapons in the game, but within the preview, these 7 are what are playable currently. Each weapon you use is tied to your progression, as you will have your character level and then your weapon mastery level. The more you fight with a specific type of weapon, the better you become with it. Each weapon has a total mastery rank of up to 20, with each rank granting a skill point that can be spent in its skill trees. Each weapon comes with 2 skill trees, which grant 2 play styles within that weapon type. For instance, the sword offers the sword tree, which is more offensive, and the shield tree, which is more defensive. Each skill tree is also able to have points spent within them simultaneously, so just because you choose to spend more points into one specific tree, you can pick up passive skills within the other. You can eventually carry up to 3 weapons at a time, so the game definitely encourages you to play with more than one weapon and level them up. Character levels work a little differently in New World as well. Taking a page from older games in the genre, each level up will provide 1 additional attribute point to be spent in strength, dexterity, intelligence, focus, or constitution. Strength determines damage with certain weapons, more primarily melee weapons. Dexterity determines damage with ranged weapons, but also some melee weapons. Intelligence determines damage done with spells and magic. Focus determines how fast your mana recharges, as well as how fast your skills come off cooldowns. And finally, Constitution determines your max health. Since you are only granted 1 point per level up, you will need to choose wisely how you determine your character build will be, since past a certain level, to respec your attributes, it will cost some currency such as Azoth. Crafting and player-driven economies also take a big focus within New World. Much like skill-based MMORPGs like RuneScape, you have a number of professions that you can train and become more adept in. New World organizes them based on crafting, refining, and gathering. Crafting includes weaponsmithing, armoring, engineering, jewel crafting, arcana, cooking, and furnishing. Engineering is used to craft bows or guns, and arcana is essentially this game's alchemy, since it is used to create potions and other similar things. The refining skills are smelting, woodworking, leatherworking, weaving, and stone cutting, with finally the gathering skills being logging, mining, harvesting, and tracking and skinning. Essentially, the trade skills are pretty self-explanatory. You use your gathering skills to collect resources such as wood or stones, which then couple with your refining skills to create refined materials, which are then used to craft specific items. Most of the crafted items within the game reflect some of the best aspects of crafting from games like Elder Scrolls Online, where you can customize your equipment sets with more refinement, such as adding more resources to have a better quality item, or even adding additional perks to your gear. The economy within New World will have players selling and buying items at each town's trading posts, obviously all being stocked with items player collect, hence being player driven. Each trading post at each town, from what I understand, will also be completely different, so items you see at a trading post in First Light will be completely different compared to items that you can see at Brightwood. This leads into the next major part of the game, the settlements, or towns if you will. Settlements in New World act as player hubs where you can do a number of different things. Here you can gather project quests to increase your reputation with the town, faction quests to increase your standing with your chosen faction out of the 3, craft various items at crafting benches, store items in the settlement bank, purchase a player-owned house, trade at the trading post, and set your home point via the inn. Each area on the map is broken into the various settlement areas that are then controlled by various factions and companies. The 3 factions are the Marauders, the Syndicate, and the Covenant. Once you choose a faction to be a part of, you can only choose guilds or companies in this game to be a part of that is within that faction. Companies are encouraged to fight over control of settlements, since the more settlements your faction controls, the more benefits you gain. However, the way this is done is a bit of an awkward system. To steal a settlement from an opposing company, you have to declare war on them. Unfortunately, once you do that, the war then takes place a day or so later at a designated time, with players from each faction being encouraged to fight to defend or attack. The system is a bit of a fail, since PvP never really happens immediately unless you have your PvP flag turned on in the open world. The system was created this way to give more of a leeway for players to set aside time for those big PvP battles, but it just seems like this method benefits a very little player base, since hardcore MMO players will set aside time for PvP regardless. All this system does is try to reach for a casual audience in a genre that is largely not made for casual players anyways, hence why a lot of players were upset that the developers changed the PvP system. Hopefully a lot of this gets changed before launch though. The quests that I mentioned earlier that you gather from settlements are also a bit of a repetitive of mess right now. Town board quests that increase your reputation are basically the same as faction quests. Most will boil down to going out and killing an X enemy, craft X item and turn in, or go to a specific point on the map and then gather X item. You will want to play these quests, however, since the rewards are incredibly important. Reputation levels up much like your character, each level giving a choice from several rewards that will increase various aspects while exploring within each settlement area. Faction quests will reward faction currency, which can then be spent on various gear sets and even epic weapons and armor. The main story and side quests will more or less introduce features or give basic rewards that will help progress and level up your character. If it was up to me, I'd really like to see more quest types introduced in the early game, like fighting boss creatures, or maybe even jump quests from games like Guild Wars. Player-owned housing I haven't gotten to experience yet since it requires a high reputation level in each settlement, as well as a high amount of gold to purchase a house, but it works like most games where you can decorate your home with items you craft or purchase. Overall, New World is shaping up to be a really fun experience, even with the hiccups and initial controversies the game has faced. The current foundation here has really set the game up to turn into something special if the developers can bring it there. I just hope it doesn't fall flat on its face, like many seem to think that the game will unfortunately do. Hey everyone, those are my impressions of New World. Has anyone else played the game yet? Do you plan on playing it? I want to ask the viewers, what do you think of New World so far? If I had to give the game a score, I'd say so far it feels like a solid 6 or 7 out of 10. There is a lot of content to experience here, but I am curious what they have in store for endgame PvE and what they plan to do to flesh out PvP more. Anyways, if you liked this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up to help get it into the YouTube algorithm, as well as subscribing to the channel. I also have my social media links listed in the description below, so if you want to follow them, they are there. Lastly, I want to thank everyone for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one.